Hello friends, and welcome to tonight's sleep story. If you wish to skip the relaxation meditation, you can click the timestamp in the description to get straight to the start of the story. Before we begin tonight's journey, I want to say thank you to all who support the channel by being channel members or patrons. Your contributions make these stories possible. If you're new to the channel, I would encourage you to subscribe and click the like button and bell icon so you will be notified when a new sleep story is ready for you. And now it's time to unwind. Find a comfortable position in your bed. Close your eyes and take a deep, slow breath in through your nose. And gently exhale through your mouth. Allow your body to sink into the mattress, feeling the gentle support beneath you. Let's take a journey. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a beautiful, serene pond. It is evening now. You can hear faintly the evening crickets serenading the moon. The water is crystal clear, reflecting the soft, silver light of the moon. The pond is surrounded by lush, verdant greenery, tall trees with their leaves whispering softly in the gentle breeze. The air is fresh and cool, carrying the subtle scent of blooming flowers and damp earth. The surface of the pond is calm, barely disturbed except for the occasional ripple caused by a gentle breeze, or a small fish gliding beneath the water. To your right, a small waterfall cascades down a moss-covered rock face. Its sound a soothing, melodic whisper in the stillness of the night. The water flows gracefully, its rhythmic splashing, nature's lullaby. The sight of the waterfall is mesmerizing, each droplet catching the moonlight and sparkling like tiny stars, before merging back into the pond. Find yourself a comfortable spot on a soft grassy patch near this pond. As you sit down, feel the cool, velvety grass beneath you, grounding you to the earth. Lean back and lay your body down, relaxing every muscle, releasing the tension of the day. Listen to the gentle sounds around you. The rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the continuous, calming flow of the waterfall. As you lie by the edge of the pond, think about your breathing. Focus on the sensation of air entering your lungs and the peaceful feeling as you breathe out. With each breath, imagine the tranquility of the pond and the waterfall washing over you, filling you with a deep sense of calm. As you continue to breathe slowly and deeply and steadily, let your mind's eye wander around the scene. Notice the delicate white water lilies floating on the pond's surface, their petals gently unfurling in the moonlight. Small frogs sit serenely on the lily pads, their gentle croaks adding to the nighttime symphony. Feel a sense of connection with this peaceful place. Imagine the cool water of the pond gently lapping around you, the soft touch of the breeze on your skin, and the steady heartbeat of the earth beneath you. You're starting to feel sleepy now, lying in the soft grass. The soothing sound of the waterfall is still there in the distance. The crickets are growing fainter, as if they are lulling you into a gentle, restful sleep. Let your thoughts drift like the water in the pond, calm and unhurried. Feel the serenity of the scene wrapping around you like a warm, comforting blanket. With each breath, sink deeper into relaxation, feeling your body grow heavier and your mind quieter. You know that this place, here, by the pond, is a place of pure tranquility. Your day has come to an end. There's nothing you need to do now. Nothing at all. You are safe. You are calm. You are at ease. So, let us drift off into a night of restful, rejuvenating sleep as you listen to these stories. An invitation given on impulse. It was a gloomy Saturday morning. The trees in the oak lawn grounds were tossing wildly in the gusts of wind, and sodded brown leaves were blown up against the windows of the library, where a score of girls were waiting for the principal to bring the mail in. The big room echoed with the pleasant sound of girlish voices and low laughter, for in a fortnight school would close for the holidays, and they were all talking about their plans and anticipations. Only Ruth Mannering was, as usual, sitting by herself near one of the windows, looking out on the misty lawn. She was a pale, slender girl with a sad face, and was dressed in rather shabby black. She had no special friend at Oaklawn, and the other girls did not know much about her. If they had thought about it at all, they would probably have decided that they did not like her, but for the most part they simply overlooked her. This was not altogether their fault. Ruth was poor and apparently friendless, but it was not her property that was against her. Lou Scott, who was as poor as a church mouse, to quote her own frank admission, was the most popular girl in the seminary, the boon companion of the richest girls, and in demand with everybody. But Lou was jolly and frank and off-handed, while Ruth was painfully shy and reserved, and that was the secret of the whole matter. There was no fun in her, the girls said, and so it came about that she was left out of their social life, and was almost as solitary at Oaklawn as if she had been the only girl there. She was there for the special purpose of studying music, and expected to earn her own living by teaching it when she left. She believed that the girls looked down on her on this account. This was unjust, of course, but Ruth had no idea how much of her own coldness and reserve had worked against her. Across the room, Carol Golden was, as usual, the center of an animated group. Golden Carol, as her particular friends sometimes called her, partly because of her beautiful voice, and partly because of her wonderful fleece of golden hair. Carol was one of the seminary pets, and seemed to Ruth Mannering to have everything that she had not. Presently the mail was brought in, and there was a rush to the table, followed by exclamations of satisfaction or disappointment. In a few minutes the room was almost deserted. Only 2 girls remained, Carol Golden, who had dropped into a big chair to read her many letters, and Ruth Mannering, who had not received any and had gone silently back to her part of the window. Presently Carol gave a little cry of delight. Her mother had written that she might invite any friend she wished home with her to spend the holidays. Carol had asked for this permission, and now that it had come, was ready to dance for joy. As to whom she would ask, there could be only one answer of that. Of course, it must be her particular friend, Maud Russell, who was the cleverest and prettiest girl at Oaklawn. At least, so her admirers said. She was undoubtedly the richest, and was the acknowledged leader. The girls affectionately called her Princess, and Carol adored her with that romantic affection that is found only among schoolgirls. She knew, too, that Maud would surely accept her invitation, because she did not intend to go home. Her parents were traveling in Europe, and she expected to spend her holidays with some cousins who were almost strangers to her. Carol was so much pleased that she felt as if she must talk to somebody, so she turned to Ruth. "Isn't it delightful to think that we all be going home in a fortnight?" "Yes, very, for those who have homes to go to," said Ruth drearily. Carol felt a quick pang of pity and self-reproach. "Haven't you?" she asked. Ruth shook her head. In spite of herself, the kindness of Carol's tone brought the tears to her eyes. "My mother died a year ago," she said in a trembling voice, "and since then I have had no real home. We were quite alone in the world, Mother and I, and now I have nobody." "Oh, I'm so sorry for you," cried Carol impulsively. She leaned forward and took Ruth's hand in a gentle way. "And do you mean to say that you'll have to stay here all through the holidays? Why, it will be horrid." "Oh, I shall not mind it much," said Ruth quickly, "with study and practice most of the time. Only now, when everyone is talking about it, it makes me wish that I had some place to go." Carol dropped Ruth's hand suddenly in the shock of a sudden idea that darted into her mind. A stray girl passing through the hall called out, "Ruth, Miss Civiter wishes to see you about something in room C." Ruth got up quickly. She was glad to get away, for it seemed to her that in another minute she would break down altogether. Carol Golden hardly noticed her departure. She gathered up her letters and went abstractedly to her room, unheeding a gay call for Golden Carol from a group of girls in the corridor. Maud Russell was not in, and Carol was glad. She wanted to be alone and fight down that sudden idea. "It is ridiculous to think of it," she said aloud, with a petulance very unusual in Golden Carol, whose disposition was as sunny as her looks. "Why, I simply cannot. I have always been longing to ask Maud to visit me, and now that the chance has come, I am not going to throw it away. I am very sorry for Ruth, of course. It must be dreadful to be all alone like that. But it isn't my fault, and she is so fearfully quiet and dowdy. What would they all think of her at home? Frank and Jack would make such fun of her. I shall ask Maud just as soon as she comes in." Maud did come in presently, but Carol did not give her the invitation. Instead, she was almost snappish to her idol, and the princess soon went out again in something of a huff. "Oh dear," cried Carol, "now I've offended her. What has got into me? What a disagreeable thing a conscience is. Although I'm sure I don't know why mine should be prodding me so. I don't want to invite Ruth Mannering home with me for the holidays, but I feel exactly as if I should not have a minute's peace of mind all the time if I didn't. Mother would think it all right, of course. She would not mind if Ruth dressed in calico and never said anything but yes and no. But how the boys would laugh. I simply won't do it, conscience or no conscience." In view of this decision, it was rather strange that the next morning Carol Golden went down to Ruth Mannering's lonely little room on Corridor 2 and said, "Ruth, will you go home with me for the holidays? Mother wrote me to invite anyone I wish to. Don't say you can't come, dear, because you must." Carol never, as long as she lived, forgot Ruth's face at that moment. "It was absolutely transfigured," she said afterwards. "I never saw anyone look so happy in my life." A fortnight later, unwonted silence reigned at Oaklawn. The girls were scattered far and wide, and Ruth Mannering and Carol Golden were at the latter's home. Carol was a very much surprised girl. Under the influence of kindness and pleasure, Ruth seemed transformed into a different person. Her shyness and reserve melted away in the sunny atmosphere of the Golden home. Mrs. Golden took her into her motherly heart at once, and as for Frank and Jack, whose verdict Carol had so dreaded, they voted Ruth splendid. She certainly got along very well with them, and if she did not make the social sensation that pretty Maud Russell might have made, the Goldens all liked her and Carol was content. "Just 4 days more," said Carol one afternoon, "and then we must go back to Oaklawn. Can you realize it, Ruth?" Ruth looked up from her book with a smile. Even in appearance she had changed. There was a faint pink in her cheeks and a merry light in her eyes. "I shall not be sorry to go back to work," she said. "I feel just like it, because I have had so pleasant a time here, that it has heartened me up for next term. I think it will be very different from last. I begin to see that I keep to myself too much, and brooded over fancied slights." "And then you are to room with me since Maud is not coming back," said Carol. "What fun we shall have! Did you ever toast marshmallows over the gas? Why, I declare, there's Mr. Swift coming up the walk. Look, Ruth, he is the richest man in Westlake." Ruth peeped out the window over Carol's shoulder. "He reminds me of somebody," she said absently, "but I can't think who it is. Of course, I've never seen him before. What a good face he has." "He is as good as he looks," said Carol enthusiastically. "Next to Father, Mr. Swift is the nicest man in the world. I have always been quite a pet of his. His wife is dead, and so is his only daughter." She was a lovely girl and died only 2 years ago. It nearly broke Mr. Swift's heart, and he has lived alone ever since, in that great big house up at the head of Warner Street, the one you admired so, Ruth, the last time we were uptown. There's the bell for the second time. Mary can't have heard it. I'll go myself. As Carol showed the caller into the room, Ruth rose to leave and thus came face to face with him. Mr. Swift started perceptibly. "Mr. Swift, this is my school friend, Miss Mannering," said Carol. Mr. Swift seemed strangely agitated as he took Ruth's timidly offered hand. "My dear young lady," he said hurriedly, "I'm going to ask you what may seem a very strange question. What was your mother's name?" "Agnes Hastings," answered Ruth in surprise. And then Carol really thought that Mr. Swift had gone crazy, for he drew Ruth into his arms and kissed her. "I knew it," he said. "I was sure you were Agnes's daughter, for you are the living image of what she was when I last saw her. Child, you don't know me, but I am your Uncle Robert. Your mother was my half-sister." "Oh, Mr. Swift," cried Carol, and then she ran for her mother. Ruth turned pale and dropped into the chair, and Mr. Swift sat down beside her. "To think that I have found you at last, child. How puzzled you look. Did your mother never speak of me? How is she? Where is she?" "Mother died last year," said Ruth. "Poor Agnes. And I never knew. Don't cry, little girl. I want you to tell me all about it. She was much younger than I was, and when our mother died, my stepfather went away and took her with him. I remained with my father's people and eventually lost all trace of my sister. I was a poor boy then, but things have looked up with me, and I have often tried to find her." By this time, Carol had returned with her father and mother, and there was a scene, laughing, crying, explaining, and I don't really know which of the two girls was more excited, Carol or Ruth. As for Mr. Swift, he was overjoyed to find his niece, and wanted to carry her off with him then and there, but Mr. Golden insisted on her finishing her visit. When the question of returning to Oaklawn came up, Mr. Swift would not hear of it at first, but finally yielded to Carol's entreaties and Ruth's own desire. "I shall graduate next year, Uncle, and then I can come back to you for good." That evening, when Ruth was alone in her room, trying to collect her thoughts and realize that the home and love that she had so craved were really to be hers at last, Golden Carol was with her mother in the room below, talking it all over. "Just think, Mother, if I had not asked Ruth to come here, this would not have happened, and I didn't want to. I wanted to ask Maud so much, and I was dreadfully disappointed when I couldn't. For I really couldn't. I could not help remembering the look in Ruth's eyes when she said that she had no home to go to, and so I asked her instead of Maud. How dreadful it would have been if I hadn't." A Case of Trespass. It was the forenoon of a hazy, breathless day, and Dan Phillips was trouting up one of the back creeks of the Carlton Pond. It was somewhat cooler up the creek than out on the main body of water, for the tall birches and willows, crowding down to the brim, threw cool green shadows across it and shut out the scorching glare, while a stray breeze now and then rippled down the wooden slopes, rustling the beech leaves with an eerie, pleasant sound. Out in the pond, the glassy water creamed and shimmered in the hot sun, unrippled by the faintest breath of air. Across the soft, pearly tints of the horizon blurred the smoke of the big factory chimneys that were owned by Mr. Walters, to whom the pond and adjacent property also belonged. Mr. Walters was a comparative stranger in Carlton, having but recently purchased the factories from the heirs of the previous owners, but he had been in charge long enough to establish a reputation for sternness and inflexibility in all his business dealings. One or two of his employees, who had been discharged by him on what they deemed insufficient grounds, helped to deepen the impression that he was an unjust and arbitrary man, merciless to all offenders and intolerant to the slightest infringement of his cast-iron rules. Dan Phillips had been on the pond ever since sunrise. The trout had risen well in the early morning, but as the day wore on, growing hotter and hotter, they refused to bite, and for half an hour Dan had not caught one. He had a goodly string of them already, however, and he surveyed them with satisfaction as he rowed his leaky little skiff to the shore of the creek. "Pretty good catch," he soliloquized. "Best I've had this summer so far. That big spotted one must weigh near a pound. He's a beauty. They're a good price over at the hotels now, too. I'll go home and get my dinner and go straight over with them. They'll leave me time for another try at them about sunset. Phew, how hot it is. I must take Ella May home a bunch of them blue flags. They're real handsome." He tied the skiff under the crowding alders, gathered a big bunch of the purple flag lilies with their silky petals, and started homeward, whistling cheerily as he stepped briskly along the fern-carpeted wood path that wound up the hill under the beeches and firs. He was a freckled, sunburned lad of 13 years. His neighbors all said that Danny was as smart as a steel trap, and immediately added that they wondered where he got his smartness from. Certainly not his father. The elder Phillips had been denominated shiftless and slack-twisted by all who ever had any dealings with him in his unlucky, aimless life. One of those improvident, easy-going souls who sit incontently down to breakfast with a very faint idea where their dinner is to come from. When he had died, no one had missed him, unless it were his patient, sad-eyed wife, who bravely faced her hard lot and toiled unremittingly to keep a home for her 2 children, Dan and a girl 2 years younger, who was a helpless cripple suffering from some form of spinal disease. Dan, who was old and steady for his years, had gone manfully to work to assist his mother. Though he had been disappointed in all his efforts to obtain steady employment, he was active and obliging, and earned many a small amount by odd jobs around the village, and by helping the Carlton farmers in planting and harvest. For the last 2 years, however, his most profitable source of summer income had been the trout pond. The former owner had allowed anyone who wished to fish in his pond, and then made a regular business of it, selling his trout at the big hotels over at Mosquito Lake. This, in spite of its unattractive name, was a popular summer resort, and Dan always found a ready market for his catch. When Mr. Walters purchased the property, it somehow never occurred to Dan that the new owner might not be so complacent as his predecessor in the matter of the best trouting pond in the country. To be sure, Dan often wondered why it was the pond was so deserted this summer. He could not recall having seen a single person on it save himself. Still, it did not cross his mind that there could be any particular reason for this. He always fished up in the cool, dim creeks, which long experience had taught him were the best for trout, and came and went by the convenient wood path. But he had no thought of concealment in so doing. He would not have cared had all Carlton seen him. He had done very well with his fish so far, and prices for trout at the lake went up every day. Dan was an enterprising boy, and a general favorite with the hotel owners. They knew that he could always be depended on. Mrs. Phillips met him at the door when he reached home. "See, Mother," said Dan exultantly, as he held up his fish. "Just look at that fellow, will you? £1 if he's an ounce. I ought to get a good price for these, I can tell you. Let me have my dinner now, and I'll go right over to the lake with them." "It's a long walk for you, Danny," replied his mother pityingly, "and it's too hot to go so far. I'm afraid you'll get sunstruck or something. You'll better wait for the cool of the evening. You're looking real pale and thin this while back." "Oh, I'm all right, Mother," assured Dan cheerfully. "I don't mind the heat a bit. A fellow must put up with some inconveniences. Wait till I bring home the money for these fish, and I mean to have another catch tonight. It's you that's looking tired. I wish you didn't have to work so hard, Mother. If I could only get a good place, you could take it easier. Sam French says that Mr. Walters wants a boy up there at the factory, but I know I wouldn't do. I ain't big enough. Perhaps something will turn up soon, though. When our ship comes in, Mother, we'll have our good times." He picked up his flags and went into the little room where his sister lay. "See what I've brought you, Ella May," he said, as he thrust the cool, moist clusters into her thin, eager hands. "Did you ever see such beauties? Oh, Dan, how lovely they are! Thank you ever so much. If you're going over to the lake this afternoon, will you please call at Mrs. Henny's and get those nutmeg geranium slips she promised me? Just look how nice my others are growing. The pink one is going to bloom. I'll bring you all the geranium slips at the lake, if you like. When I get rich, Ella May, I'll build a big conservatory, and I'll get every flower in the world in it for you. You shall just live and sleep among the posies. Is dinner ready, Mother? Trouting's hungry work, I'll tell you. What paper is this?" He picked up a folded newspaper from the table. "Oh, that's only the old Lake Advisor," answered Mrs. Phillips, as she placed the potatoes on the table and wiped her moist hot face with the corner of her gingham apron. "Letty Mills brought it in around the parcel this morning. It's 4 weeks old, but I kept it to read if I ever get time. It's so seldom we see a paper of any kind nowadays. But I haven't looked at it yet. Why, Danny, what on earth is the matter?" For Dan, who had opened the paper and glanced over the first page, suddenly gave a choked exclamation and turned pale, staring stupidly at the sheet before him. "See, Mother," he gasped, as she came up in alarm and looked over his shoulder. This was what they read. "Notice: anyone found fishing on my pond at Carlton after date will be prosecuted according to law, without respect of persons. June 1st, H.C. Walters." "Oh, Danny, what does it mean?" The Dan went and carefully closed the door of Ella May's room before he replied. His face was pale and his voice shaky. Mean? Well, Mother, it just means that I've been stealing Mr. Walter's trout all summer. Stealing them. That's what it means. Oh, Danny, but you didn't know. No, but I ought to have remembered that he was the new owner, and have asked him. I never thought. Mother, what does prosecuted according to law mean? I don't know, I'm sure, Danny, but if this is so, there's only one thing to be done. You must go straight to Mr. Walters and tell him all about it. Mother, I don't dare to. He is a dreadfully hard man. Sam French's father says... I wouldn't believe a word Sam French's father says about Mr. Walters, said Mrs. Phillips firmly. He's got a spite against him because he was dismissed. Besides, Danny, it's the only right thing to do. You know that. We are poor, but we have never done anything underhand yet. Yes, Mother, I know, said Dan, gulping his fear bravely down. I'll go, of course, right after dinner. I was only scared at first. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll clean these trout nicely and take them to Mr. Walters, and tell him that if he'll only give me time, I'll pay him back every cent of money I got for all I sold this summer. Then maybe he'll let me off, seeing as I didn't know about that notice. I'll go with you, Danny. No, I'll go alone, Mother. You needn't go with me, said Dan heroically. To himself, he said that his mother had troubles enough. He would never subject her to the added ordeal of an interview with the stern factory owner. He would beard the lion in his den himself, if it had to be done. Don't tell Ella May anything about it. It would worry her. And don't cry, Mother. I guess it'll be all right. Let me have my dinner now, and I'll go straight off. Dan ate his dinner rapidly. Then he carefully cleaned his trout, put them in a long basket with rhubarb leaves over them, and started with an assumed cheerfulness very far from his real feelings. He had barely passed the gate when another boy came shuffling along. A tall, raw-boned lad with an insinuating smile and shifty, cunning eyes. The newcomer nodded familiarly to Dan. Hello, Sonny. Going over to the lake with your catch, are you? You'll fry up before you get there. There'll be nothing left of you but a crisp. No, I'm not going to the lake. I'm going up to the factory to see Mr. Walters. Sam French gave a long whistle of surprise. Why, Dan, what's taking you there? You surely ain't thinking of trying for that place, are you? Walters wouldn't look at you. Why, he wouldn't take me. You haven't the ghost of a chance. No, I'm not going for that. Sam, did you know that Mr. Walters had a notice in the Lake Advisor that nobody could fish in his pond this summer? Course I did. The old skinflint. He's too mean to live, that's what. He never goes near the pond himself. A regular dog in the manger, he is. Dad says. Sam, why didn't you tell me about that notice? Gracious, didn't you know? I suppose everybody did. And here, I've been taking you for the cutest chap this side of sunset, fishing away up in that creek where no one could see you, and cutting home through the woods on the sly. You don't mean to tell me you never saw that notice? No, I didn't. Do you think I'd have gone near the pond if I had? I never saw it till today. And I'm going straight to Mr. Walters now to tell him about it. Sam French stopped short in the dusty road and stared at Dan in undisguised amazement. Dan Phillips, he ejaculated, have you plumb gone out of your mind? Boy alive, you needn't be afraid that I'd peach on you. I'm too blamed glad to see anyone get the better of that old Walters. Smart as he thinks himself. Gee, to dream of going to him and telling him you've been fishing in his pond. Why, he'll put you in jail. You don't know what sort of man he is. Dad says. Never mind what your dad says, Sam. My mind's made up. Dan, you chump, listen to me. That notice says prosecuted according to law. Why, Danny, he'll put you in prison, or fine you, or something dreadful. I can't help if he does, said Danny stoutly. You get out of here, Sam French, and don't be trying to scare me. I mean to be honest, and how can I be if I don't own up to Mr. Walters, that I've been stealing his trout all summer? Stealing? Fiddlesticks. Dan, I used to think you were a chap with some sense, but I see I was mistaken. You ain't done no harm. Walters will never miss them trout. If you're so dreadful squeamish that you won't fish no more, why, you needn't. But just let the matter drop and hold your tongue about it. That's my advice. Well, it isn't my mother's then. I mean to go by hers. You needn't argue no more, Sam. I'm going. Go then, said Sam, stopping short in disgust. You're a big fool, Dan, and serves you right if Walters lands you off to jail. But I don't wish you no ill. If I can do anything for your family after you're gone, I will. And I'll try and give your remains Christian burial, if there are any remains. So long, Danny. Give my love to the Walters. Dan was not greatly encouraged by this interview. He shrank more than ever from the thought of facing the stern factory owner. His courage had almost evaporated when he entered the office at the factory and asked shakily for Mr. Walters. He's in his office there, replied the clerk, but he's very busy. Better leave your message with me. I must see Mr. Walters himself, please, said Dan firmly, but with inward trepidation. The clerk swung himself impatiently from his stool and ushered Dan into Mr. Walters' private office. Boy to see you, sir, he said briefly, as he closed the ground-glass door behind him. Dan, dizzy and trembling, stood in the dreaded presence. Mr. Walters was writing at a table covered with a businesslike litter of papers. He laid down his pen and looked up with a frown as his clerk vanished. He was a stern-looking man with deep-set grey eyes and a square, clean-shaven chin. There was not an ounce of superfluous flesh on his frame, and his voice and manner were those of the decided, resolute, masterful man of business. He pointed to a capacious leather chair and said concisely, "What is your business with me, boy?" Dan had carefully thought out a statement of facts beforehand, but every word had vanished from his memory. He had only a confused, desperate consciousness that he had a theft to confess and that it must be done as soon as possible. He did not sit down. "Please, Mr. Walters," he began desperately, "I came to tell you your notice. I never saw it before, and I've been fishing on your pond all summer, but I didn't know. Honest, I've brought you all I caught today, and I'll pay back for them all sometime." An amused, puzzled expression crossed Mr. Walters's non-committal face. He pushed the leather chair forward. "Sit down, boy," he said kindly. "I don't quite understand this somewhat mixed-up state of yours. You've been fishing on my pond, you say. Didn't you see my notice in the Advisor?" Dan sat down more composedly. The revelation was over, and he was still alive. "No, sir. We hardly ever see an Advisor, and nobody told me. I'd always been used to fishing there, and I never thought but what it was all right to keep on." I know I ought to have remembered and asked you, but truly, sir, I didn't mean to steal your fish. I used to sell them over at the hotels. We saw the notice today, Mother and me, and I came right up. I've brought you the trout I caught this morning, and if only you won't prosecute me, sir, I'll pay back every cent I've got for the others. Every cent, sir, if you'll give me time. Mr. Walters passed his hand across his mouth to conceal something like a smile. Your name is Dan Phillips, isn't it? He said irrelevantly. And you live with your mother, the widow Phillips, down there at Carlton Corners, I understand. Yes, sir, said Dan, wondering how Mr. Walters knew so much about him, and if these were the preliminaries of prosecution. Mr. Walters took up his pen and threw a blank sheet towards him. Well, Dan, I put that notice in because I found that many people who used to fish on my pond, irrespective of leave or license, were accustomed to lunch or camp on my property, and did not a little damage. I don't care for trouting myself. I've no time for it. However, I hardly think you'll do much damage. You can keep on fishing there. I'll give you a written permission, so that if any of my men see you, they won't interfere with you. As for these trout here, I'll buy them from you at Mosquito Lake prices, and we'll say no more about the matter. How will that do? Thank you, sir, stammered Dan. He could hardly believe his ears. He took the slip of paper Mr. Walters handed to him and rose to his feet. Wait a minute, Dan. How was it you came to tell me this? You might have stopped your depredations, and I should not have been any the wiser. That wouldn't have been honest, sir, said Dan, looking squarely at him. There was a brief silence. Mr. Walters thrummed meditatively on the table, then waited wonderingly. Finally, the factory owner said abruptly, There's a vacant place for a boy down here. I want it filled as soon as possible. Will you take it? Mr. Walters? Me? Dan thought the world must be turning upside down. Yes, you. You are rather young, but the duties are not hard or difficult to learn. I think you'll do. I was resolved not to fill that place until I could find a perfectly honest and trustworthy boy for it. I believe I have found him. I discharged the last boy because he lied to me about some trifling offense for which I would have forgiven him if he had told the truth. I can bear with incompetency, but falsehood and deceit I cannot and will not tolerate, he said, so sternly that Dan's face paled. I am convinced that you are incapable of either. Will you take the place, Dan? I will, if you think I can fill it, sir. I will do my best. Yes, I believe you will. Perhaps I know more about you than you think. Businessmen must keep their eyes open. We'll regard this matter as settled then. Come up tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And one word more, Dan. You have perhaps heard that I am an unjust and hard master. I am not the former, and you will never have occasion to find me the latter, if you are always as truthful and straightforward as you have been today. You might easily have deceived me in this matter. That you did not do so is the best and only recommendation I require. Take those trout up to my house and leave them. That will do. Good afternoon. Dan, somehow, got his dazed self through the glass door and out of the building. The whole interview had been such a surprise to him that he was hardly sure whether or not he had dreamed it all. I feel as if I were some person else, he said to himself, as he started down the hot white road. But Mother was right. I'll stick to her motto. I wonder what Sam will say to this.